So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Brian Maryland. I oversee the safety and security department here at Bethany Village, and along with that comes doing our fire drills, elopement drills, and some other various safety and risk assessment things. As I said, this presentation is provided to us by our third-party consultants, Atlantic Code Consultants and Harold Hicks. Some of you had the pleasure of meeting Harold back in May when he was here to do his observe the drill and his boating inspection that he does every year. The objectives of today's presentation: recognize the need for fire safety, understand the risks of residents, they are humans and the human factors that go with it, recognizing fire hazards, know what to do in the event of a fire emergency planning, recognize fire safety features in the building, know who is responsible, and understand our licensure demands by the state. So why do we need to know fire safety? We collectively, as associates and as a community, are the first line of defense for our residents in the event of a fire. What we do, the residents often will take our lead. So I always like to say we want to move with purpose in the event of a fire, but we don't want to be panicked, we don't want to be anxious, we don't want to be running. We want to move with purpose, but if we get amped up, the residents are going to get amped up. And so we want to try and minimize that as much as possible. The residents are counting on all of us, and just a statistic they throw in here, 1/3 of all residential fire deaths of the elderly, it is the 6th leading cause of death among older adults. Everyone that's part of the Maplewood team is responsible, and I always take that a step further. Everybody that's a part of Bethany Village and the community is responsible, whether you're housekeeping, dining. Fire safety is no joke, and it is everybody's responsibility when it comes to response. Residents in assisted living facilities pose an increased risk. Here's a couple reasons why. Many ignore the fire alarm, which obviously you guys that have done drills with me in the past have experienced. Almost 1/4 of residents in assisted living say they cannot hear the alarm, whether that be due to not having their hearing aids when they're sleeping, or whether that just be to regular hearing deficits. A third want to try and find the source of the fire. We've had residents in the past that have been previous members of fire departments or EMTs, and they revert back to that, and they actually want to try and help and or find the source of the fire, that can often complicate things. Less than half say they are familiar with fire safety procedures in their home, and these results just confirm a greater risk in community or living conditions. Voting construction features. You'll actually see on the next slide a little bit more about this, but there are 5 different construction classifications for buildings, 1 through 5, and basically that just has to do with what materials and things they're built out of. Hazardous area enclosures, safe areas of refuge, which would be our fire safe zones. When we evacuate, closing those fire doors and what we designate as a fire safe zone. Protection of vertical openings, fire rated doors, which you guys see as you walk up and down the hallway. They're the automatic doors that close when the alarm goes off. And then our fire exits. This is a little bit about minimum construction features. This slide really, we don't need to know all the specifics about the different types. Basically just know that there are several different types, 1 being the least combustible, 5 being the most combustible. We are a type 2. We don't quite meet all requirements for type 1. More of your high rises in the cities and those types of things. They have even more stringent requirements than what we do. All the way up to type 5, basically just being your wooden shed in the backyard that can ignite pretty quickly. Life safety drawings, these, hopefully you recognize these because they're posted all over the Maplewood neighborhoods, and they just list our different fire safe zones where the exits are. And we will go over this, if anybody has any questions, we'll go over this more specifically at the end as it relates to our fire drills. Preventing the spread through construction, fire doors, fire windows, fire smoke dampers, and penetrations. Again, fire doors are those doors that you guys see when you're walking down the hallway. When the fire alarm goes off, the magnets automatically release them. They are rated up to, the doors have specific time ratings on them, and they fall in line with our fire walls in our construction, and so that we can actually evacuate and shelter in place if we have to, a lot of times for up to 2 hours, and let things go around us if need be, or until the fire department gives us other direction. Fire windows, that's your temperature rated glass and things like that. Fire smoke dampers, that's what's in our air handling units, all of our ductwork. It essentially acts the same as the fire doors, just inside ductwork. So we're required to have those every so often and to keep the fire from spreading through our air handling system. And then penetrations, this is a big one that Harold always hits on when he's here. He opens all of our closets, all of our little IT closets and maintenance and storage areas, and he looks for anything, wires, cables, pipes, anything that penetrates a wall, and then he makes maintenance. If it's not already there, he ensures that maintenance covers that with some sort of fire-resistant insulation. What are hazardous areas? Hazardous areas are defined by the Life Safety Code as the following areas: boiler or fuel-fired heater rooms. That would be our boiler room, which is not in Maplewood itself, but over by the kitchen and the loading dock. Laundry facilities, paint or maintenance shops, soiled linen rooms, storage rooms greater than 100 square feet, and trash and collection rooms. So all of those, with the exception of, I don't know if we actually have a room that's bigger than 100 square feet, are part of Maplewood. So there are those hazards on every floor, pretty much everywhere you turn in Maplewood. Means of egress, these are just specific terms that they use when they break down exiting for fire purposes. The exit access would be the blue or purple colored there. That's just your corridor or your hallway and how you're getting and starting to move to the exit. Then you have the exit area itself, which are stairwells or lobbies just before the actual doors, and then your exit discharge are the doors to the outside themselves. Understanding travel distances, this basically just comes into play when they're writing building code and building construction, as well as our time to evacuate during fire drills. They calculate the total distance you have to travel, basically from a dead-end corridor or in the back of a bathroom or bedroom in Maplewood, and that's why our stairwells are, we have to have so many stairwells and so many exit doors to get out, as well as that's where they calculate the time for our fire drills. Emergency lighting, what do emergency lights do? Obviously our emergency lights work in the event of a power outage. I was actually just talking to John about this a couple minutes ago beforehand. All of our emergency lighting on the west campus is generator operated, so they are all operated on the generator. The east campus has the battery powered ones. They're required at points of egress, exits, stairwells, those types of things, anything to get you out of the building. With ours being on the generator, it's basically every so often one of the actual normal lights on. So they look just like our normal lights, you don't see them out there, it's every third or fourth light. Some parts of the building it's 7 or 8, just depending on code. And as far as the maintenance requirements for the lights, the battery powered ones, they have to test every 30 days, and annually they have to actually let that run for 90 minutes. Our generator ones are different. They have to do the transfer switch to the and ensure that the generator powers everything appropriately. Along with that, you guys know we have red outlets in the rooms. Those red outlets are on the generators for oxygen, feeding, well, Maplewood doesn't have feeding tubes, but any other safety equipment, CPAPs, and those types of things that we would be required. Marking of means of egress. These are basically your exit signs. Exit signs are required. Basically anywhere that you would be, you come to a T in an intersection of a hallway, an exit sign is required, or you should be able to look and see an exit sign so that you know which way to go to get out, as well as the stairwells and all the doors to the outside. They are required to be red or green in color, and as far as size, there is actually a size requirement. The letters have to be 6 inches high. There's actually some pretty stringent requirements on that in order for them to count. And their testing criteria as far as illumination is the same as the emergency lighting. Interior finishes, what's regulated for assisted living, anything on the walls, ceilings, cabinets, and the floors that is able to burn. So basically, your paints, your finishes, anything that's on the cabinets, the furnishings, anything that's built in construction inside the rooms or the hallways is regulated. Examples include paneling, plywood, laminate on cabinets, ceiling tiles, and plastics. Furnishings, mattresses, and decorations. These items are regulated a lot more stringently in boarding care facilities, boarding care meaning assisted living or skilled nursing, or other types of homes, as compared to independent living in just your standard apartments or out in the open. Maintenance here is actually, I believe, is required to do an evaluation when a resident moves in. They actually go through and after they move in and kind of do a safety inspection and ensure that there's nothing in there, candles or anything like that that's going to cause an issue. Even certain types of cords and wires that have old inline switches in them and things like that can pose a hazard. So maintenance goes through and ensures that those are all in working order and safe after a resident moves in. Potential hazards, candles obviously are a big no-no. Heating equipment such as space heaters, holiday decorations, those can be your Christmas lights and those types of things. And I know that we do go through and kind of try and minimize that as much as possible, but just ensure that there's no frayed wires and things like that. Electrical wiring, smoking, obviously a big one, and cooking. And along with cooking, this is something I encourage everybody to report to their supervisors, because Maplewood does have microwaves and toasters. So it's important to pay attention to the residents, what their needs are, what they're capable of doing as far as cooking. We do get alarms that go off from burnt toast or things in the microwave. So if there is a resident that you feel is confused or having trouble with those types of things, ensure that you notify your supervisor, notify Bridget, notify Sean, and they will do an evaluation and determine if that equipment is safe to actually leave in there, because there are residents that we've removed that equipment from their rooms because it poses a potential safety hazard. This is a quick video they'd like you to watch. It's just under 3 minutes, there's no audio, but basically it shows you how fast a fire can ignite and go. It actually is going to seem a little long when you're just sitting in here watching it, but if you pay attention to the time and realize that it's only 3 minutes, and what your average fire department response is and what our average response is, does actually stop and make you think. So as you can, if you can't see, there's a small trash can beside the couch in that chair, which is on fire as we speak. And you'll see how fast it can ignite the furniture and other combustibles. And this is where things get really interesting. So if you pay attention to the next minute, how fast it goes from here. So again, this is just your standard standalone home or house that many of us live in. It is not the building that we have here, so that's fortunate that we have a lot of things to help prevent that from getting that quickly out of control. But it is something just to think about. On average, we're averaging about 6 or 7 minutes for a fire drill, which is awesome. That's really good for our size of facility and what we're doing. But if you think of what can happen if equipment fails in 3 minutes, it really stops and makes you think. Things that we have as far as fire protection features, we do have a fire alarm system here, not just because it's required. Smoke detectors in sleeping rooms and corridors, carbon monoxide detectors, duct detectors up in the attic, manual fire alarm pull stations, they're all the red pull stations that you see in the hallway, and then obviously the actual alarm itself, the horns and strokes. And our system is required to be connected to an off-site service, so our fire alarm is connected to Simplex. So in the event the fire alarm goes off, for whatever reason, whether it be a false alarm or an actual event, the alarm has to communicate with Simplex. There's actually a phone line built in the alarm that communicates with Simplex, who then reaches out directly to county or the fire department. And so that service is already on its way before you even have to call or do anything. That service is automatic from the county. Now, having said that, evacuating residents and yourself and safety is obviously our number one concern. But the faster that you can notify somebody if it is a real event or a real fire, the better. Because county's response to an automatic fire alarm versus an actual structure fire with possible entrapment or whatever is going to be very, very different. And we're going to get a lot more mutual aid and a lot faster response. God bless all the men and women of Pennsylvania that are volunteer firefighters, but Pennsylvania is made up of about 75% volunteers. And so just that reality check of thinking the person in the middle, that's coming to help you, may be sleeping and have the option to get up because they have to go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning or, and coming out for a nuisance alarm versus a real event. So the faster we get that communication to county and can let them know that it is a real event, the better. And then other equipment that we have, obviously fire extinguishers, which you see in the hallways, and our automatic sprinkler system. For those of you that don't actually know how a sprinkler system works, all of our sprinklers, they have they can be different colors. Most of ours over in this area are red, I believe. Those caps are temperature sensitive. They have to reach, I believe it's 155 or 160 degrees. And when the cap melts from the temperature, that's what then allows the water to flow through the sprinkler. And then kitchen hood suppression systems for those that need litter and dying. Operating considerations, our emergency plan. That's something that if you've never looked at, it's interesting to look at, and you'll want to, sometime you have extra time on your hands, which I know we all do. Feel free to ask your supervisors where it's at. For Maplewood, we're looking at evacuating to Oak Terrace if we have to actually do an evacuation out of Maplewood itself, you'd be looking to evacuate to Oak Terrace or Springfield Private Dining Room or the dining rooms. And if we have to do a whole building evacuation, we're fortunate enough to have East as an option that we can evacuate to with shuttles. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into that planning as far as transportation and everything. But it is important to know that we do have those plans in place. Resident training as far as our fire drills, and then again with emergency egress and relocation drills, that just plays into our fire drills that we do monthly. What to do in the event of a fire, the old acronym BRACE that you learned in elementary school. This just breaks it down a little bit more, being resident specific. But rescue, alarm, contain, and evacuate. First, we want to rescue ourselves or the residents that are in immediate danger. That's where that other life safety equipment such as the fire extinguishers come into play. Fire extinguishers really should be used if they're blocking you from getting out. If the fire is out of control, it's a lot better to start evacuating than trying to put the fire out with a fire extinguisher. Having said that, if it's a small trash can fire or something like that, you know, that's fine, but just don't spend too much time trying to put the fire out where we can work on evacuation a lot quicker. So again, rescue, then pull the fire alarm, contain, close the doors to other rooms as you remove the residents to the exit. This goes for windows and turning the lights off, those types of things as well. Anything we can do to minimize that fire from spreading, and evacuate the residents to a safe area or to the exit. Evacuation procedures, there are 3 modes of evacuation according to the Life Safety Code. Total evacuation, which would be getting out of the building completely, use of smoke zones, and defend in place. We do a combination of use. We don't really call them smoke zones. Ours are actual fire safe zones. They're rated for a certain amount of time that we can shelter and defend in place. And we can talk about that a little bit more specifically when we wrap up here. Evacuation capability is essential. The Life Safety Code defines 3 levels of capability: prompt, slow, and impractical. This comes into play more with your residents that are in wheelchairs, using walkers, those that may have hearing deficits or vision deficits and can't see. And it's important to know when you're dealing with a mass fire or a mass event, we want to move people in numbers. And it's not pretty to think about, but if you get to a resident that's stuck in bed and can't get up without more than one of you and you need assistance getting them to a wheelchair or whatever, we want to move on to where we can help more people. For drill purposes, we have to get everybody out.
I have 5 minutes.
For drill purposes, we have to get everybody out. But in the course of a real event, it's not pretty to think about leaving somebody behind, but we want to work and getting all those people out that can walk and are easily evacuated first, then go back and get those that have mobility issues and whatnot. Because the more, we have to look at it in terms of numbers, and the more people that we can evacuate, the better. Resident evaluations, we know there's more than 7 criteria, but the Life Safety Code defines 7 specific risk factors when evaluating the risk of injury or death to older adults from a fire. Risk that the individual will resist leaving the building, which we see here. Individual's past response and their history to fire drills. The individual's response to instruction. So that's just, can they even follow basic commands and listen to what you're saying? Often you guys know during drills, you may be pushing somebody in a wheelchair, trying to escort somebody in a walker, but you have somebody that's able to follow instructions and mobile in front of you, and you're really evacuating more than one person at a time. The need for extra help, the individual's waking response to alarms. As many of you know, when hearing aids aren't in, there's several of our residents don't even hear the alarms in the middle of the night. For those of you that work 3rd shift, we experience that just about every drill. There's always at least 1 or 2 that don't even know the alarm is until you go in and wake them up. And then the individual's need for life support, such as oxygen, CPAPs, and other things. Strengths and weaknesses as far as the resident evaluations. Strengths, able to learn and practice egress without assistance, can communicate dangers to others and to other residents. Able to hear and understand the fire alarm, normal mobility, and then weaknesses, dependent on verbal encouragement or assistance. Objects in the path of egress can create difficulty. That's important. Those wheelchairs, walkers, chairs, tables, things that are left in the way when you walk into a resident's room that pose a potential hazard of getting out. Unable to hear, understand instruction, restricted mobility, visual impairment, and physical impairment. What are the specific licensure demands? As far as for us in Maplewood, we are required to do an unannounced drill once a month. We are required to keep written records of those drills. They can be found in my office or down in the maintenance office. Residents have to evacuate. It is not optional for assisted living. We have to evacuate residents. The only two exceptions being those that are on hospice or those that are actively dying, and we prefer to have a doctor's order for that. And we've done really well over the last year and a half of getting the kind of doing that ahead of time and getting those doctor's notes so that when we have residents that are actively dying or in hospice, we can leave them. If a resident refuses, technically we may have to do the drill, and then either Bridget or Jean would have to sit down with them and go over, because it's in their contract that they've signed upon moving in. So real quick summary, fire safety is a community commitment. Again, everybody is responsible to help respond and evacuate. Fire drills are essential to safe egress. I know that nobody enjoys fire drills, but I will tell you, I'm one of the nicest people that does fire drills around, and many people here will agree with that. So it irks me to no end if I walk past a break room or another area and see people in there that aren't jumping up to help. That's a big pet peeve of mine. So just know that it is everybody's responsibility, and I try and make things as easy as possible. Knowing fire hazards improves our awareness. Knowing fire safety features of the facility organizes us for emergency planning, and not only we, but you guys can all make a difference. So that wraps up the PowerPoint.